Dear students, welcome to the lecture on measurements and instrumentation. Today we will be discussing the topic induction type single phase energy meter. So this energy meter is basically used to measure the energy consumed in an AC circuit. So this energy will be measured or it will be indicated for a prescribed period for which we are trying to measure the energy, and where we are will get accurate results when your supply voltage as well as frequencies remain constant. So this is designed to operate in such a way, but this is able to operate for different supply voltages, variation in supply voltage as well as variation in frequencies. Now energy meter is an integrating instrument, so we'll see what this particular term is. It is an integrating instrument which measures the okay 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 so you are keeping an energy meter from the supply mains. You have the supply mains, so from that you have the supply is coming, so you have the energy meter. So from the energy meter you are powering. Through the energy meter the power is supplied to the entire house. So the energy meter, or the simply you call as a meter, uh, uh, where the KCB meter reader comes and takes the reading. So it measures, or it indicates the energy that is being measured. So it is indicated in terms of kilowatt hour, which is a unit of energy. And now we'll look at this electromechanical type energy meter which we are going to study. So this is indicated in terms of kilowatt hour. So this was old type of meter that was in use. Now this is replaced with digital energy meters. So this is kilowatt hour meter or kWh meter. Now this is single phase, and the type is also specified, that is a type of the instrument or the manufacturing type. So it is designed for 220 kV. It has a current rating of 10 ampere, and it also can be arranged or connected to to send 20 ampere through it. It is designed for 50 hertz, and it is having a meter constant of 600 revolutions per kilowatt hour. Now the meter constant is defined as the number of revolutions required by the meter to indicate revolutions made by the disk. So you have a disk here. So you must have seen the disk will be rotating once the once it starts measuring the energy, or once any of the device starts consuming power. uh, this particular energy meter disk will be rotating. So number of revolutions required by the disk to indicate 1 kilowatt hour of energy is termed as energy meter constant. So in this particular case, in this particular example, this is 600 revolutions per kilowatt hour. That simply means that once this particular disk rotates by 600 revolutions, rotates 600 times, you will have 1 kilowatt hour uh, consumed by the load which is behind this particular energy meter, or load after the energy meter. Okay, so that is the concept of meter constant. Now the basic principle of energy meter is electromagnetic induction, and you have a metallic disk. So this metallic disk will be cutting the magnetic field produced by some coils. We'll specify what these coils are. So you have a metallic disk, okay, and you have coils. So these coils will be carrying alternating current or AC current, which induces EMF in this metallic disk. So you have a metallic disk which carries, which rotates within this vicinity of this magnetic field, or under the influence of magnetic field, and this uh, coils will be carrying current, and EMF will be induced in this metallic disk once it cuts this magnetic field. And the induced EMF will produce some eddy currents in this disk, and these eddy currents interact with the fluxes that is already there. So you have some flux that is produced by the coils. So it interacts with the coil coil flux and produces some torque, and the disk rotates. Okay. So initially you will have no torque, so slowly your flux will be building up, slowly your eddy currents will be forming, and the disk starts rotating. Okay, so that is how this entire thing works. And when you move to the construction of single phase energy meter, you have a driving system, you have a moving system, braking system, and a registering system. So in driving system, what we do have is So mechanisms like magnets. So we have a series magnet here. This is one magnet, and we have another magnet here. Okay, so this is another magnet. So these two mechanisms form the driving system, and the moving system includes this disc, aluminum disc, and this shaft, and also some other uh, connections provided to the shaft. So these are pivoted at the top and bottom using some bearings, which reduces the frictional errors. Now you have the braking system, which is provided by this braking magnet, which provides a braking system, because this once it's consumes steady power, so it is consuming 100 watt of power, so it has to rotate at a particular fixed speed. Only once the power increases and the power consumption increases, the speed will increase. So in order to bring the this to a steady rotation, you need some braking mechanism, so that is provided by this particular braking magnet. And you have a registering mechanism. This registering mechanism will be provided in order to record the uh, this particular rotations. So that will be in terms of dials. Okay, we'll have different types of dials, and currently in digital energy meters we can indicate, we can see it in terms of numbers. It will be showing us digital digits. So in earlier case, it used to be like dials, and then you used to have rotating dials. Okay, so such mechanisms were available. So these are the general parts or construction specifications of this single phase energy meter. This is the figure that you need to draw once once you are asked to explain the construction of energy meter. And you can see that the input supply is given at this side, and you have load, which is also connected. So we'll see each mechanism in detail. Now, what is this series magnet? First, we look at the driving mechanism. What is a series magnet? It consists of U-shaped. So this is U shape, uh, and is made of silicon steel. So that is a material that is used, silicon steel, and here it is laminated in nature. So what do you mean by lamination? So here you can see that this is the series coil, and these are the laminations. Just like sheets of paper, you are arranging thin sheets of silicon steel U-shaped material close to each other to get some thickness. So you'll have number of laminations here, and that will be brought together to get this thickness. So these laminations are provided in order to reduce the eddy currents in that particular magnet. So that concept you will be learning later. Now this this laminated silicon steel is used to form core. So this is the core that we have. And why do you call this particular magnet as a series magnet? Because this you have a coil which is wound or the series magnet. So you can see that this is a coil that is there. So this coil will be carrying some current, and this current is connected directly provided to the load. So you connect your load here. So this series magnet uh, will be carrying the current which is proportional to the load current. So suppose this is IL, so it carries a load current, and also the coil is made up of thick wires which is having fewer turns. It carries a load current, and it is connected in series with the load, and hence this particular magnet is known as a series magnet. And it is also known as, this coil is also known as current coil, because it is connected in series with the load and it carries the load current. And this current coil produces magnetic field proportional to and in phase with the line current I. Okay, so we are assuming that this particular coil is having minimum reactance, so that whatever the flux that is produced by this particular current is in phase with this particular current. Okay, so flux will be proportional to the current. This flux will be proportional to the current that is flowing, so in phase with the current. Now you have again the shunt magnet. So this is a shunt magnet. As you can see, this is M-shaped magnet, and again you can see it is laminated. Here you can see the laminations. Okay, so these are laminated, and you are providing the coil to the central limb. You have three limbs, so you are providing the coil to the central limb, and this particular coil is made up of thin wires, and this is connected across the supply or across the load. Okay, you can see, describe it in anyone. It is connected across the load between these two points. So These are connected across a load. This is also known as voltage coil or potential coil. It is also known as voltage coil or potential coil, and it is made up of thin wires, and it is highly inductive in nature. It has having negligible resistance, and it is the coil is wound in such a manner that it is having high inductance. This inductance, why do you want to have high inductance in this particular coil? Because the flux as well as the current as well as the flux has to lag the supply voltage by 90 degrees. So in order to get this particular criteria, meet this particular criteria, we are going for highly inductive nature of the potential coil or the voltage coil. So the voltage that is coming across this particular coil is the supply voltage V. So once the coil is highly inductive in nature, the current flowing through the coil will be lagging behind the voltage by an angle of 90 degree, and the flux also proportional to the current will be lagging the voltage by 90 degree. So in order to get this particular factor of or get this particular this thing arrangement, or to get 90 degree difference between the current and the voltage, you are making this highly inductive in nature. Also, you are provided with some copper rings, okay, or it is also known as shading rings. So these rings are provided on the central limb in order to bring the uh, uh, angle, that is a phi to be close to 90 degrees. This particular what you can say, this voltage coil, even though you assume that the voltage coil is highly inductive in nature, it may not be. It will be having slight resistance, so you will not practically get 90 degree angle without any further adjustments. So what you do is that you provide a copper ring, so that copper ring will be adjusted in such a way that the flux produced by this current that is flowing will be lagging behind the voltage, or will be in out of phase, lagging behind the voltage by an angle of 90 degree. Okay, so that is the purpose of copper shading rings. So these are adjustable in nature, so that you can adjust the flux, just the angle between flux and the voltage. Now we have the moving system, which consists of light aluminum disc, which is mounted on the vertical shaft. So this disc is placed in the air gap of the two electromagnets. So you have two electromagnets, which is one is M-shaped and the other is U-shaped. So this is your voltage coil, and this is your voltage potential magnet or voltage magnet, and this is your current coil magnet, or the series magnet. Okay, and now you'll have some time varying or sinusoidal flux produced by this shunt and series magnet, which will be inducing some eddy currents in the aluminum disc. So aluminum disc is rotating under the or within the space provided by this electromagnet, so you will have some eddy currents induced inside this or on this disc. So you will have some interaction between the magnetic field and the eddy currents, which sets up a driving torque. Okay, so that driving torque is responsible for the rotation of the disc. Now the number of rotation of the disc is proportional to the energy consumed by the load in a certain interval of time, indicated in terms of kilowatt hour. So that is the entire process. Now we'll move to the braking system. So the braking system consists of a braking magnet, as we have already seen. So why do you provide the braking system? So you should have some steady state at which your this particular mechanism works. So in order to provide the braking torque, you are providing some braking magnets. Okay, so once a disc rotates, what happens? Once a disc rotates, you will have some eddy currents set up in the disc. So that eddy currents will be reacting with the magnetic field and exerts a braking torque. So we had seen how these eddy currents are formed in the disc. So it will be circulating in nature, and these eddy currents will be opposing the motion. So the motion is the rotation of the disc. So you'll have some steady state achieved. It will not be bringing the disc to a halt or stop. It will be just bringing the acceleration to zero, so that your disc will be rotating at a constant speed once the power consumption is constant. So by changing the position of the braking magnet or diverting some of the flux, that is magnetic flux by the braking magnet, the speed of the disc can be controlled. Okay, so that is how you control the speed of the disc. Now, finally, you have the registering mechanism. So, since it is an integrating type of instrument, we need to see how or what is the energy that is being consumed. So, we have a registering mechanism which is coupled to the, if you can think of a electromechanical type of instrument, just like we are describing, we can think of an arrangement which is connected to the shaft. So, here you have the shaft to which some gears are connected. So that gears, you have some worm gear arrangement, and those gears are connected further to the dials. So depending on the rotation of your disc, that rotation is directly converted to the indications. So here you can see that so you have different dials available. So each of these dials indicate different values. So we are not concerned about the reading of how to read it. You have different references available in internet which gives you a good insight into how you can read such dials. So you can go through it if you're interested. Now this was the initial kind of arrangement where you have rotary dials. Now later we have also seen dials like this, where it indicates different positions, ones, tens, 100,000, 10,000. So similar to this, we have a different type of dial, and later we moved on to the digital type of energy meter, where your readings are indicated in terms of kilowatt hour. So current is shown, voltage is shown, the power that is consumed is shown, power factor is shown, the frequency is also shown. So everything is shown on a single dial, can be shown on a single dial, or on a single screen. So this is the kind of register mechanism. Now why do you say that you have this is an integrating type of instrument? Because we are adding up the energy that is consumed uh, one after the another. Say for 1 hour you measure the energy, or you add up the energy, and after 1 hour you again add to the previous value. That is how your meter reads. So you'll take the difference between the readings of two instants, and you calculate the energy that is consumed. That is what we do when meter reader comes. So you take the difference of readings between the previous reading and the current reading, so you get the total energy consumed during that period. So hence it is known as an integrating type of instrument, which sums up the values, sums up the energy values. Now in a practical case, uh, in addition to this M-shaped and U-shaped mechanism, you have a continuous magnetic path provider, mm, complete path provider, which is otherwise also called as the stator. Okay, so this is a stationary part, and you have the moving part inside this. Rest all are the same. You'll have different copper bands provided, not only in the central limb but on the other side limbs also, in order to adjust the flux. In order to make the flux lagging the voltage by 90 degrees, you are provided copper bands, and rest of the mechanisms are almost the same. Now you can look at the practical energy meter. You have the voltage coil here. So one indicates a voltage coil, it's inside this. Then you have the current coil here. Then this entire thing is a stator. Okay, you can appreciate that this is a stator into which you are connecting the M-shaped magnet as well as the U-shaped magnet. Then you have rotating disc here. Okay, so you have the disc here. Then you have rotor brake magnets here, so which is again U-shaped in nature. So you can see the U-shaped magnet here, so which is the brake magnet, which the position can be adjusted. Then you have the spindle, and the gear. Inside this you have the gear mechanism. Okay, so gear is here, and ultimately you have the dials. Okay, so this is the entire mechanism of electromechanical type of induction energy meter. And what is the theory behind the operation of this particular energy meter? So we have supply voltage V, which is provided, and your voltage coil is connected across this supply voltage, and the current coil is connected in series with this load, and it carries the load current. So load current will be flowing through this particular series coil, and through the voltage coil you have the current proportional to the supply voltage. So I have some I shunt current flowing through the voltage coil. Suppose V is a reference voltage, we are taking the supply voltage as a reference, and here we assume that the supply voltage is equal to the load voltage. So that is assumption that we make, and we assume that your shunt impedance, impedance of your shunt coil is almost fully composed of your reactance, or your RSH is almost equal to 0. So that is the assumption that we take. So keeping these two assumptions in mind, your supply voltage is equal to load voltage, so we are taking that as a reference. So your since your shunt voltage is shunt impedance is composed of reactance or resistance is 0, your voltage I shunt will be lagging behind the voltage by angle of 90 degree, which produces phi sh, or the flux due to the ISH. So again, that will also be lagging the voltage by an angle of 90 degree. Again, you have provided the copper shading rings also, remember that. So ultimately we are will get an angle between phi sh and Vs 90 degree. Now this particular flux will be inducing some EMF in the aluminum disc, because we have aluminum disc here. This is time varying in nature, this flux. So that indicates even if your flux is stationary, since this is time varying flux, that EMF will be induced in this aluminum disc, which is given by ESH, and this ESH will be lagging behind the flux phi sh by an angle of 90 degree. So you suppose you can take phi sh is equal to phi max sine omega t. So how will you get ESH? You differentiate d phi by dt. So once you differentiate it, see, you'll have a 90 degree difference. You differentiate it and you will understand. Compare these two equations, you will have a 90 degree difference. So your ESH lags the flux by 90 degree. So ESH is drawn here, and your aluminum disc is you are assuming that it is purely resistive, or the reactance of the aluminum disc is almost equal to 0. So since you are assuming that it is purely resistive, this ESH, that is voltage induced in the aluminum disc, produces an eddy current ISH, which will be in phase with it, because the disc is purely resistive in nature. So you have ISH in phase with this ESH, and you can see that your phi sh and ISH are having a difference of 90 degree. Okay, ISH is not the current that is flowing in this shunt coil. ISH is the current that is flowing in the aluminum disc. Okay, and this is I shunt. I shunt produces phi sh, phi sh produces ISH. So these are having a difference of 90 degree between them. Now, now the supply current lags the voltage by an angle of theta, suppose. Okay, because this is depending on the power factor of the load. So this theta I am indicating instead of phi, because already we have phi here. So I am replacing this phi with theta, or phi is a power factor angle. Now your theta is equal to the power factor angle. In certain textbooks, you will see this particular angle as phi. So both are same. So this theta is equivalent to the power factor angle phi. So your current will be lying behind the voltage by an angle of theta degree, assuming an inductive load. Now this current will be passing through the series magnet and produces a flux phi s in it. So this the flux produced by the series magnet will be in phase with the current. Okay. Now that flux induces an EMF ESC in the disc. Okay. So this flux will be producing an EMF ESC in the disc, aluminum disc, which will be lagging by 90 degree. Always there will be a 90 degree difference between the flux produced and the EMF produced by the flux and the EMF that is produced. So EMF will be lagging behind the flux by an angle of 90 degrees, and this particular EMF produces eddy current ISC in this disc. Okay, so since aluminum disc is purely resistive, we have in phase current and voltage. So ISC is the eddy current, ISH is also the eddy current. ISC is due to the series coil and ISH is due to the shunt coil or the voltage coil. Now you have two torques produced. Two set of driving torques are produced. So these are driving torques. So two driving torques are produced. the first one is due to the interaction of phi sh, flux phi sh, and the eddy current ISC. And the second is due to the interaction of flux phi SE, that is the flux due to series magnet and the current due to the shunt magnet, and the eddy current due to the shunt magnet. Okay, now the torque one T1 will be equivalent to or proportional to ISC phi sh and the angle between them. So angle between ISC and phi sh will be theta. So this ISC and phi sh, this angle also will be theta. Since this angle is theta, you have 90 degree here, this angle also will be theta. So the angle between ISC and phi sh is theta. So ISC phi sh cos theta. And second equation, that is a second torque, torque due to interaction between ISH and phi SE, that will be given by proportional, the torque proportional to ISH phi SE into cos of 180 minus theta. So angle between ISH and phi SE. Okay, so this entire angle will be here. So this entire angle will be 180 minus theta, ISH and phi SE. So the resultant driving torque will be the difference between these two torques, T1 minus T2. So once you do the simplification, you will get it, this particular equation as the driving torque proportional to, we have some proportional constants here, driving torque will be proportional to VI cos theta, where theta is a power factor angle. Or the driving torque will be proportional to the active power that is consumed by the by the load which is connected across this particular energy meter. Okay, so driving torque is proportional to the active power. Now you have some opposing braking torque produced, TB. So this aluminum disc will be rotating, and the speed of the aluminum disc will be proportional to the rate of cutting of braking magnet by the disc. So you have a braking magnet available. So depending on the rate of cutting of braking magnet flux, the speed of the aluminum disc is getting adjusted. Now the torque produced by the braking magnet is proportional to speed of the disc. That is the torque produced by this particular braking magnet. You have some braking magnet, so it will be producing some torque. So once the speed increases, the torque also increases, because more eddy currents will be produced, so you'll have more torque. So if the speed reduces, the eddy currents produced also will reduce, so the torque reduces. So the braking torque produced by the braking magnet will be proportional to speed n in RPM. Now the steady rotational condition of the disc, that is when your speed becomes steady, when you have no acceleration, your TD becomes equal to TB. TD is the driving torque and TB is the braking torque. And we can see that VI cos theta is proportional to N. Okay, and VI cos theta is proportional to N. And when you integrate it on both sides, what will be integral of power? It will be energy. So you are integrating the power to get the energy, and you are integrating the speed over a period of time to get the number of revolutions. You have some number of revolutions, so that will be for a particular time period T. So for a particular time period, for a particular time period T, you will get number of revolutions, and that number of revolutions can be an indication of the energy that is consumed. So here, since we are integrating the power, we can call this instrument as an integrating type of instrument theoretically, and also we are integrating the energy, that is integrating the value of energy that is consumed. Integration simply means that you are summing up the value. Say from 1 second to 2 second, you have 1 kilowatt hour. From 2 to 4 second, you have 3 kilowatt of hour. Okay, so your total value will be, after 4 seconds, the total value will be 4 kilowatt hour. So this summation is simply termed in terms of integration. So such a meter is known as an integrating type of instruments. So here you can see that the average generated driving torque will be balanced by the braking torque, and at that instant or during that condition, the speed will be almost constant, and you will have a steady rotation condition. So this particular process gives you the energy consumed, which is proportional to the number of revolutions. So by counting the number of revolutions, you can predict, or you can say that this is the energy that is being consumed. So this relationship gives you the value of K also. K is the meter constant, revolutions per kilowatt hour. Okay, so that is the idea. Hope you have understood or have some insight into the working of energy meter. So thank you.